Friday evening in Amsterdam, and there is barely room to move. The guarantee of a good night out has been its appeal for centuries. But 19 million tourists now descend every year on a city of just 850,000. And the centre of the problem is here, the De Vollen area, the main red light district, the very heart of the Dutch capital. Well, it's about 10:30 on a summer's evening, and you instantly get a sense of the problems that the authorities face. These narrow streets are incredibly overcrowded. They have been for hours. They feel almost claustrophobic. Amsterdam's liberal drug and sex laws have been a major draw for some time, but now the city simply says it cannot cope.
This alleyway is closed, that way.
A code red has been deployed. So-called city hosts are shutting off streets to prevent a crush. What's happening here?
Because it's getting too crowded on the other side. We have to close the alley from here. Don't let people in anymore, only let people out.
It's too dangerous.
It's getting too dangerous right now.
Closed, gentlemen, that way.
One official has described the city as a lawless urban jungle. But could Amsterdam's days as a party capital now be numbered? The city's previously tolerant approach is hardening. A crackdown on antisocial behaviour. £130 fines handed out by enforcement officials patrolling the streets. Vadim and Yuri are one of 8 teams out on any one night. What's the worst thing that you've seen in the last couple of years?
We've seen people dying, getting in fights ourselves, seen people sick on the ground.
Jumping out of the windows because they use too much drugs. Dying because they fall into the canal and can't swim.
Do you think what you're doing is making a difference?
Of course. Yeah, it is making a difference. A couple years ago, when we were not here, there was a lot of more fightings, drugs dealing.
Even in the day, the party doesn't stop. But how residents nearby wish it would. Beert Knapp has lived on the doorstep of the red light district for more than 4 decades. Ringing the church bells, writing for the local paper, despairing for his neighbourhood.
Amsterdam used to be called the Venice of the North because of our canals.
Yeah.
And now people are calling Amsterdam Venice of the North because of the crowds. There are more and more intrications with tourists. It's getting more aggressive. Tourists telling me actually to go away if I'm not pleased with their behavior.
They come up to you, even as a resident?
Yeah, I had a bunch of guys. I talked to them. I said to them, please, can you be a bit more quiet because we live here? Mm. And he said, well, you have sex workers in your streets, you sell alcohol and drugs and everything. Actually, we own your street, so if you don't like that, move out. I'm an Amsterdammer. I want to stay here. This is my neighborhood. So there are still people who want to fight for the neighborhood. And if we don't do that, we lose the city to international tourism.
And the heart of Amsterdam just disappears?
It will die, yeah, completely.
Traditionally, tourists have been welcomed by the city's other residents, the sex workers. There are an estimated 6,000 prostitutes in Amsterdam, many of them working in the roughly 170 windows that line the canals. Foxy Angel is 38 and has been doing so for 16 years.
Oh, we're here now at my former window, so I'm going to show you.
And you worked here just last year?
Yes, yes, and I'm going to let you experience what it is to be a sex worker. So yeah, this is one of the windows.
And it's about eye contact?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, you just look them in the eyes and then you can see if they are willing to come inside or not. Yeah, wiggle your ass and smile at them.
And when you're standing here and looking out, what's some of the worst things that you've seen tourists do to sex workers?
They yell at sex workers, they call them horrible names, throw stuff at the window, spit at the window.
To reduce the numbers on the streets, Amsterdam's mayor wants sweeping changes, but it will mean overhauling the sex industry. Proposals include banning sex workers standing in windows, shutting the red light district completely, moving it, or even expanding to ease overcrowding. Plenty of options, but finding a consensus is proving difficult.
You have to start with the origin of the problem, and that are the tourists, and not the sex workers. So why are you punishing the sex workers for the tourist behavior? Because we hear a lot from the sex workers that the tourists are just flying over here, going out, not even book a hotel room, and go back the next morning.
You say you don't want those kind of tourists.
No,
and yet
no.
you need tourists.
Yeah, we need tourists, but we need tourists who are willing to spend money. And when you have the budget tourists, yeah, they spend money on booze and nothing else.
One of the ideas is to close the red light district. A good idea?
Yeah, and where will the tourists come for then? For the cheese?
You most probably cannot imagine a shop like this, promoting the use of condoms in the daytime where even kids can see a condom. Guys, we don't care.
In the height of summer, 1,000 guided tours snake round the red light district every week, often paralysing this part of the city. There are rumours they will be banned altogether. But it wasn't that long ago that Amsterdam actively sought millions more holidaymakers. And I'm meeting Stephen Hodes, the man who was in charge of marketing the Dutch capital to the world.
At the end of the last century, we wanted to achieve more people, as many people to come to Amsterdam. We were proud of Amsterdam. We wanted to share it with the world.
With tourist numbers predicted to reach around 30 million within a decade, Stephen has now changed his view completely. He believes for Amsterdam to survive, it must stop being so accessible, even as the authorities continue to approve more and more expansion. How radical does the solution need to be?
At the moment, there are 8,000 hotel rooms in this city that's been approved of that have to be built, and 14,000 in the direct environment. They have to be built, but not one more. The second airport should not come. The second cruise terminal for larger cruise ships should not be built. We have to take those right. This has economic impact on the city, but the great thing about Amsterdam compared to Venice, Venice is totally dependent on tourism. We have a mixed economy.
I asked the city council for their response to what Stephen told me. They did not reply. If it continues to grow as numbers are predicted, what will Amsterdam look like in 20 years?
Oh, not 20. In 5 to 10 years, it'll be a Disneyland. The locals are avoiding the city center. And so now you have a tourist ghetto. Is that what you want as a tourist, to come and see other tourists? No.
But at the moment, it is not putting tourists off. Indeed, they flock here because of the very image that the city cultivated, a place that's cheap to get to and hedonistic to stay in. And it may already be too late to persuade people otherwise.